Well, hello everyone and welcome to STC Training Solutions. My name is Innes Eaton. I'm a specialist paramedic and principal here at STC. We've put together a series of videos to help those of you that are interested in studying the FREC suite of qualifications. And in this first episode, we're going to talk about some of the CPD requirements, continual professional development requirements set down by Qualsafe for those of you that are looking at completing these courses. This is one of the common questions we get asked by prospective students is what is CPD, how much do I need to do, and how can I prove that I've done it? Hopefully in this video we can answer those questions for you. You'll see at the end we've put our contact details. If you do have any questions, do please feel free to get in touch, and we hope to see you on one of our courses in the near future. So this is the first in a series of free online sessions for those of you that are interested in completing the FREC training. If you'd like to see more, or if you'd like to download the slide pack that comes with this presentation, you can do so from our website. Go to www.stctrainingsolutions.co.uk and follow the links for CPD Home. You'll find this and a wealth of other information, plus the recordings of our live webinars and our schedule of future live webinars, all in one place. So what is CPD? This session is all around what it is, what counts as CPD, what types you need to do, because there are some different kind of categories of CPD, how you go about recording that, and finally probably the most common question we get is how much CPD do I actually need to do, and that's both whilst you're studying the courses and once you're complete and once you have your FREC 4 or FREC 5 qualification. So what is CPD? Well, it stands for Continuing Professional Development, and put simply, it is a record of your ongoing learning and development throughout your career. So it is in the most part responsible for ensuring that your skills are refreshed. So of course, not everything you're taught on your FREC 3 or FREC 4 courses you're going to use every day. So it's making sure that you get opportunity to refresh those practical skills at least annually with your ILS that we'll talk about shortly, and of course making sure that you're keeping up to date with changes in procedures. So when you're taught FREC 3, FREC 4, FREC 5, of course you're taught the latest information that we have available at that time. But of course over the years that information does change, and CPD is one of the ways that you can ensure that you keep up to date with the current guidance. One of the big changes recently has been around management of anaphylaxis from the Resource Council UK, and of course part of your CPD would be to keep up to date with changes like that. Fundamentally though, CPD is all about allowing you to practice safely at all times. So whatever we're doing has to be kind of with that in mind. It's keeping you refreshed, keeping you up to date with changes, and allowing you to practice safely. So CPD is a requirement of all healthcare professionals. It's not just healthcare professionals. Actually, a lot of other industries require their staff to undertake CPD. But within healthcare, all healthcare professionals are responsible for maintaining a CPD portfolio. It's not just registrants. I think a commonly held belief or misheld belief is that it's only paramedics, doctors, nurses, etc. that need to maintain their CPD. It's not. It's actually a condition of FREC 4 and FREC 5 qualifications. As you'll see, there's no requirement for FREC 3 staff to maintain a portfolio of CPD from Qualsafe, who are the awarding organisation, but it will almost certainly be a condition of employment, as we see at the bottom there. So what counts as CPD? Well, thankfully, almost anything does. So the key things to bear in mind, it has to be relevant and contextualised to your qualification. They're the key phrases. So you can't go off and do your FREC 4 and then study a module in brain surgery. Ultimately, if you're not going to be able to practice that in your day-to-day practice, then it's not relevant. Of course, anything we do record has to be contextualised to your qualification. Again, ride-outs and things like that are acceptable. But as I say, if we're recording things that aren't relevant to what you're doing day to day, then that won't count as CPD. But we broadly break it down into 4 key areas that you can see on the screen there. So there's work-based learning, professional activities, formal education, and self-directed learning. Now, they are fairly self-explanatory. We'll look at what work-based learning consists of, and that's the learning from doing types of things. So putting into practice what you've learned on your courses, under guidance and coaching from others, of course. Working with mentors in your workplace is absolutely going to count as continued professional development. Discussion with colleagues when you have those jobs that you didn't quite know what to do, or the job that didn't go well, or a very difficult job. You go back and you discuss those. That absolutely counts. Shadowing and secondments, as I say, if you're going off and watching different areas of practice. So I tend to say just the secondments and the shadowing opportunities that you get, provided they are relevant and they are going to give something to your practice, then you can record them as CPD. If you were to go and do an A&E placement whilst working as an ECA, absolutely, that's really good. Again, if you're going into theatres to do airway management and things like that, possibly quite not so much. But it depends. It's got to be contextualised. When we look at expanding your role, so taking on new responsibilities, doing project work, training that happens in-house within your organisations, and of course supervising and mentoring others, which does cross over into professional activities somewhat, but they would all be considered as work-based learning. So for those of you that are a bit more experienced. As I say, going across into professional activities would include things such as teaching and lecturing, and again, you could make a case for mentoring activities to fall within that category, giving presentations to groups and at conferences, training events, etc. Maintaining and developing a specialist skill is absolutely. It's not so many opportunities within the FREC framework to do these things, but of course, as you progress through your career, you may well be able to develop into a specialist area. Being involved in a professional body such as the Health Professions Associate Council, the HPAC, and of course when you guys go on and register as paramedics with the HCPC and the College of Paramedics, etc., they're all professional bodies that you can get involved in their work. Undertaking and supervising research, nothing to say you have to be a paramedic or a registrant to do that type of work. And again, we've put in there supervising and mentoring others because it does cross across both of those areas. Formal education is the next one. Again, fairly self-explanatory, going on accredited courses, watching webinars, conducting research or reading research, writing articles, distance and online learning, those of you that are doing degree top-ups and things along those lines, this would count. Further or higher education, again, if you go on and become a paramedic, that absolutely counts towards your CPD requirements for FREC 4 or FREC 5, for as long as you need those. Going to conferences and seminars, and of course planning and running a course yourself does count as formal education. So that is something you can log as well, those of you that are out there teaching. Flicking over finally to self-directed learning, again, is pretty much anything that's relevant that you've taken on and done yourself. So reading journals and articles, reflective practice, which we're going to come on to in just a second. Reading and watching online content from trusted sources, of course. So a lot of the stuff out there on YouTube is very, very good. But again, the more you watch, the more you'll see some iffy content and things that aren't backed up by fact. So just bear in mind the sources you're getting them from. Reviewing books, articles, and guidelines is all self-directed study and all stuff that you're going to need to do to keep up to date. Listening to podcasts is quite a common thing. There's some really good ones out there, such as the Resus Room. And actually maintaining your CPD portfolio is part of your CPD. So you can use that time that you're putting your portfolio together as CPD hours, which is fab. So I mentioned there reflective practice. So it's something it's not mandatory by any means for FREC 3 and FREC 4, but it is something that you'll probably naturally do anyway. And reflective practice is all about looking back at how we've done things and looking for the opportunities to learn from those. And we naturally do that. We naturally look at human instinct is to learn from our mistakes. And actually we what we do is we harness that ability in healthcare, and we use reflective practice quite regularly. Certainly those of you that go on to become paramedics will become very familiar with reflective models and writing reflective pieces. But it's a good thing to get into as early as you can in your career, because it really does help kind of form really good lessons from some of the experiences we have out on the road. But basically, reflective practice, as I say, is looking at a job you've done, looking at the things that went well and bolstering those, looking at the things that didn't go so well and reading around why, and perhaps refreshing your knowledge or practicing your skills so that next time, if you were faced with something similar, you wouldn't make the same mistakes. An old mentor of mine used to say it's only a mistake if you do it twice, and that's something I certainly carry forward. We learn from our mistakes. You're expected to make mistakes in this role. What we don't expect is for you to go on and keep making those same mistakes. So reflective practice is one of the ways that we can limit those. There's two main models that I'll introduce you to. I would suggest if you're new to reflective practice, you just stick to this one, which is Borton's reflective model. And it's 3 phases. Basically, you look at what happened, explore the role, what was the goal, was it achieved, what was good and what was bad about the experience, those types of questions. And then we look at so what. So it's the analysis and the evaluation of what went on. So what have you learned? What do you need to learn? What, as I say, particularly focusing on the areas that didn't go so well. And then now what? Now what is thinking about what would happen if something similar, because very rarely do we get the same thing happen twice, but if the similar thing happens again, what would I do? What would I do the same? What would I do differently? And actually, is there a call? Is there some further research that needs to be undertaken in that area? The other reflective model you'll see around is Gibbs. This is a little bit more in depth. This is more aimed at those of you that are going up to kind of level 6 study and looking at doing your paramedic science degrees. You'll certainly be expected to use Gibbs at some stage or another. It's a 6-stage process that basically does the same as Borton, just in a little bit more broken down fashion. Again, description, what happened, how did that make you feel, how did that make others feel, evaluate what was good and bad about the incident. Analyse, what else can you gain, what could be learnt. Conclusion is what else could you have done, looking at other options that were available to you. And the action plan again, which is how Borton's ends, is how Gibbs ends. And that's if you were faced with something similar in the future, what would you do differently? What would you do the same? Reflective practice is a really important part of your CPD, and as you'll see here, that one of the common questions we get asked is, what types of CPD do I need to do? Well, actually, we should try and aim to complete all 4 types. Don't just do, when you submit your CPD portfolios to whoever's asking for them, don't just put work-based experience in there. It doesn't show very much. It just shows that you've got a qualification and that you're employed and you've maintained that employment. We all know that in our day-to-day jobs we become complacent. We don't tend to learn that much every day. So you need to bolster that with other bits and pieces. So the 4 types, as I say, the work-based learning, so mixing that up with some professional activities, going to some formal education events and undertaking some study, and of course listening to these podcasts and these webinars certainly counts as that. And then self-directed study, making sure that you are going out of your way to identify your learning needs and read around those subjects. And I think the key points there are that you know what you're not very good at. So there's no point just doing CPD in areas that you're comfortable with. Push your boundaries. Make sure you're studying and reading around things that you haven't done for a while or things that you're not very happy with. And always just a good habit to get into is whenever you do CPD, just jot down, it only has to be a sentence or 2 or a paragraph at the end of your CPD entry, and that's how did it improve the quality of your work, because it has to, otherwise it's not relevant, and how would it benefit your service users? So by service users we mean our patients. So how is it going to improve your work, and how is it going to improve the quality of care provided to these patients? And it's generally a very similar answer to both of those, but unless you can answer those, then the CPD probably isn't that relevant. And the final question we often get is how do I record CPD? So again, it really is up to you. It's ideally electronically, because you are increasingly so these days going to be asked to provide your CPD portfolios, whether by us as a training provider, whether by Qualsafe as part of an audit process, or as part of applying for a new job. Your employers have a right to see your CPD logs. So ideally you want to keep them electronically and in a format that allows you to just run off a summary rather than dumping 160 pages of work on somebody's desk. But the CPD log should include, as a minimum, these 3 points. So the date and the approximate timings of the CPD activity. Of course, nobody's going to mind if you're a little bit out on timings with regards to professional conversations that you may have had. But if you've attended an all-day event, you should record the number of hours that you were there. If you've listened to a podcast or something along those lines, you should put the approximate time of the podcast and how long it lasted. And ideally, the type of CPD that you've undertaken and a brief synopsis of what was undertaken is all that's required. Just quickly jot down what the event was all about, and then this is arguably the most important bit, which is some form of reflection on how it will improve your practice and the benefit that service users. As we said from the previous slide. If you can't answer both of those points, how has it improved your practice, how will it benefit the service user, then actually it probably wasn't that relevant. But so this is the most important point of your CPD log. So the date and the approximate timings, the type of CPD, and a brief synopsis of what was undertaken, and then this little reflective element as to how it's going to make things better. It is the most time-consuming part. As I said, it's not always the most exciting bit to write, but it is important. Do keep it up to date. There's nothing worse than being asked for your CPD portfolio and having to scramble around to put together 2 years worth of work. It happens to paramedics time and time again that don't keep their CPD portfolios up to date. Anyone can ask for it at any time, realistically, especially once you're qualified. Qualsafe can ask you. As I say, your employers can ask you. It is absolutely acceptable to have a table in Word or Excel that's kept up to date. You may find it easier to use some of these online services such as CPD.me that I've put at the bottom there. We've no affiliation with them other than I use CPD.me for my paramedic portfolio and find it very user-friendly. They do cost though, they do charge. I forget how much CPD.me is, but it's over the course of a year or so, it doesn't actually work out to be very much. And in my opinion, worth the money. But of course, if you're not wishing to spend any money on this, then you don't have to. You can just keep an up to date table. The good thing about CPD.me and other platforms such as that is that you often have access to good CPD content as well. One of the reasons why I'm with CPD.me is for their live webinars and the recorded webinars that they have on the portal. Here's an example of the CPD.me dashboard, just for those of you that are interested. It gives you a little summary of your CPD activities over the last 12 months, how much you've logged and how many entries you've made, and of course it's a good safe place to keep all these certificates electronically. And I can print off a summary at any point if my employer or the HCPC or the CQC or anybody like that asks to see my CPD portfolio, then I can just quickly print off a summary and there we go. And then one thing we just want to clarify, because there's been a bit of chopping and changing around how much CPD is required. So I've got two answers to this question, one of which is whilst you're working through the FREC pathway. So before you start your FREC 3, you're now required to undertake 14 hours of pre-course study. Those are on defined subjects. Your course provider will provide you with a list of those subjects that you need to read on, hopefully in ample time before you come and join for day one. You'll get those whenever you book online. If you book with us, it comes through as a PDF attachment. So around 14 hours on those subjects. In between your FREC 3 and FREC 4, this is the area that has changed a little bit over the last couple of years. Ideally, between your FREC 3 and FREC 4 courses, you should be undertaking 118 hours. Don't ask me how they came up with that number. 118 hours of relevant CPD and or contextualised practice. And that goes back to the four areas that we talked about in this session. So the qualification specification document, which Qualsafe produce and is available to download from their and our website, I've taken the snippet on the next slide to show you, but they do provide some specific guidance around what counts as CPD from their point of view. It is permissible to use CPD and contextualised practice that you've gained prior to completing your FREC 3, although they do say that ideally that 118 hours should be completed between the courses. And for that reason, we set a minimum of 3 weeks between completing FREC 3 and completing FREC 4, or starting FREC 4, should I say, unless you're exceptional experience, you've been working in some other role in healthcare and that you do have loads and loads of CPD that we can use, then in that case that we can bend that rule slightly. Before starting your FREC 4, again, you do have an additional 20 hours of pre-course study. That's in addition to the 118 hours mentioned in between your FREC 3 and FREC 4. You have a 20 hours of pre-course study, again, on defined subjects that your course provider will send you information on before your course starts. Again, if you book with us, you get that at the time of booking. At the moment, as things stand, there are no formal requirements between FREC 4 and FREC 5. Whether that will change in future as these courses are all being updated at the moment, who knows. But for the time being, you can just go straight from day 5 of FREC 4 once you've completed all your workbooks and all those types of things, and go straight on to your FREC 5 course without any additional CPD. This is the guidance specifically from Qualsafe Awards for those of you that are progressing from FREC 3 to FREC 4. It is worth a read, and important that you understand this requirement. We do now ask to see evidence of this before we'll allow you to join us on day 1. So please make sure you are aware of this. If you're booking your FREC 4 course, you need to provide evidence of this before we'll allow you to join the day 1 of your FREC 4. So you have to provide the centre with an accurate CPD portfolio that's your own work ready for audit. The CPD portfolio must contain an accurate report on the activities a learner has undertaken to improve their practice. It must show 118 hours of study and or contextualised practice have been completed. They go on to say some of the information might include reading journals, social media posts, again, make sure they're from reliable sources, news articles, preparing presentations, attending CPD sessions, etc., etc. Quite a lot of things there. It does say, though, the important paragraph at the bottom there, that if we do suspect that this information isn't true, then it will be reviewed and investigated further by Qualsafe. And if they deem it to be false, then of course you won't be permitted to join your FREC 4, or your FREC 4 certificate will be null and void. So do bear in mind, you can't just make it all up. So the second answer to that question is, how much CPD do I need to do? Well, once you have your FREC qualification, I've broken it down into FREC 3, FREC 4 and FREC 5 for you. So once you complete your FREC 3, there is no formal requirement, but the certificate is only valid for 3 years for that reason. There is only a recommendation or requirement to complete an annual basic life support refresher course. We recommend the QA Level 2 award in BLS for adults and children. But the requirements are, you must complete a requalification or a FREC 4 course before the expiry date of your certificate. That's really important. We don't grant extensions on those dates, neither do Qualsafe. So you must complete the requalification or your FREC 4 course before the FREC 3 expires. So get that booked in nice and early if that's something you want to do. If you do go a day over, unfortunately, you do need to recomplete the initial 5-day FREC 3 course again. Unfortunately, there is no room for manoeuvre on that one. Just a point of note is, if you completed the Administration of Emergency Medical Gases add-on to FREC 3, then that is only valid for a year. So if you come back to us for your annual BLS refresher, we include an annual gases refresher for those that need it at the same time. So once you have your FREC 4, there is a requirement to maintain a CPD portfolio. So you have to do 118 hours before you can start your FREC 4. Once you have your FREC 4, your requirement is to keep that CPD portfolio up to date. Now, rather helpfully, nobody actually says how much CPD is required as a minimum. So I've gone by what the HCPC have previously said, and that's obviously aimed at paramedics, but I think it's a sensible set of guidelines. And they say that as an absolute minimum, you should be doing some form of good quality CPD every 2 months, and I think that's reasonable. I think you'll naturally do that anyway, unless you're just not involved in the industry at all, in which case you probably should be doing a bit more just to keep up to date. So again, this session has given you some guidance on what counts as CPD, and you know, how to record that. How much to do is really up to you, and identifying your own learning needs, and based on how much experience you're getting and how much exposure in practice. There is also a second requirement of FREC 4, which is that you have to attend an annual refresher training that includes the assessment and treatment of cardiac arrest and life-threatening injury and illness, is the wording that Qualsafe use. So basically, any recognised ILS qualification should meet that requirement. So you don't have to do a Qualsafe ILS course. You can do an internal in-house ILS course with your employer. And of course, you can do other awarding organisations' versions of the ILS, so the Resource Council, Pro Trainings, etc. The requirements for FREC 5 are exactly the same as FREC 4. You have to maintain a CPD portfolio and attend an annual recognised ILS course. It does specify that it must be an ILS course for FREC 5. I know that in the past, FREC 4, if you just did a BLS course, that technically counted. But with FREC 5, they specify that it must be a recognised ILS course every year. How much leeway do you get on that is another quick question we get, and from a discussion with Qualsafe, it would appear that you get around 3 months leeway on doing that ILS every year. So, but aim to complete it on time. If you go much more than 3 months, you're going to have a valid reason as to why you're late with your annual ILS. And that summarises CPD. As I say, there's our contact details at the bottom. We've got trainers at stctrainingsolutions.co.uk. Do feel free to drop us an email and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you have any questions with regards to CPD or with regards to any of our courses. All of our courses are available to book online. And if you're looking at doing a FREC 4, then please do make sure that you're going to be able to complete the required 118 hours in time for day one. As I say, it's non-negotiable. Unfortunately, if you turn up on day one and you haven't submitted your CPD portfolio, we are under strict instructions to send you away. So we can't do very much about that. So something very important to note. But any questions, then do get in touch. We hope you found this video useful. You'll find more videos on the CPD section of our website. And we look forward to seeing you in the near future. Take care. Bye-bye.